A billionaire's peaceful life begins to crumble when a terrible event shakes his home. His fiancée, who appears elegant, loving, and supportive in front of everyone, hides intentions no one suspects. One day, the twins he adores are found in danger, and all the signs seem to point toward the maid who has cared for the family for years. She is suddenly accused of something she insists she did not do. The situation creates confusion, fear, and tension throughout the mansion, but in the middle of all this chaos, there is a small detail, something almost invisible that becomes important later, an object left behind without much thought, meant to blame the innocent maid. At first, no one notices it. However, this single detail slowly becomes the key that changes everything. Jonathan Miller felt lost after Emily died during the birth of their twins, Noah and Liam. Every room of the mansion reminded him of her. He walked through the halls with slow steps, trying to understand how life had changed so quickly. The silence inside the house felt heavy, and he had trouble sleeping. His days were filled with confusion as he tried to balance grief and responsibility. His assistants repeated information several times because he kept forgetting things. The pressure increased each day, and Jonathan began to accept that he could not keep pretending he was managing everything. During this vulnerable time, Vanessa Turner approached him in a gentle and calculated way. She appeared when he least expected it, offering a listening ear and calm presence. Jonathan did not question her intentions because he needed support. She spoke softly, told him to breathe, and encouraged him to rest. Her charm made her seem understanding, and her confidence made him feel safe. As days passed, she started visiting more often. She brought small gifts for the twins and healthy meals prepared especially for him. Vanessa's presence reduced some of the silence that had taken over the mansion. As Vanessa continued appearing in his life, she slowly entered areas of the mansion that once belonged only to Emily. She started helping with small tasks around the nursery, arranging baby clothes, and holding the twins while Jonathan rested. Jonathan accepted these changes because he did not have the energy to resist. He saw her involvement as kindness, not intrusion. Vanessa became a steady part of his routine, and he began asking for her opinion about small decisions. With each passing day, Jonathan relied more on her presence to get through the long hours. Grace Thompson brought a steady rhythm back into the house. She had worked for the Miller family for more than 10 years and knew the mansion very well. She understood how to take care of Noah and Liam in a calm and patient way. Every morning she checked the nursery, arranged the babies' blankets, and prepared everything they needed for the day. Jonathan trusted her completely because she had always been loyal and dedicated. However, Grace noticed something troubling. Whenever Vanessa held Noah or Liam, the babies reacted differently. They became restless, moving their arms and legs as if they wanted to escape. Sometimes they cried immediately, even if they had been calm before. The discomfort was clear to Grace, but Vanessa ignored every sign. Grace remained professional and did not confront Vanessa directly. Instead, she paid attention to the twins and picked them up as soon as Jonathan allowed her to. Noah and Liam relaxed as soon as they were back in her arms, which confirmed her suspicion that something about Vanessa bothered them. While Jonathan relied on Grace in a natural and familiar way, Vanessa started noticing the connection between them. She watched how Jonathan listened to Grace, how he trusted her judgment, and how relaxed he seemed when she was around. This bothered Vanessa more than she expected. She had grown used to being the person who comforted Jonathan, so seeing someone else hold that position made her feel pushed aside. Every time Grace entered the room, Vanessa felt her confidence weaken. As days passed, Vanessa's discomfort slowly turned into resentment. She paid close attention to Grace's actions, observing every movement and every interaction. When Grace carried the twins, Vanessa watched from a distance. When Jonathan thanked Grace for her work, Vanessa took mental note of his tone. She interpreted Grace's natural role in the house as a threat. Vanessa's coldness grew stronger each day. She acted possessive toward Jonathan and watched Grace with increasing suspicion. As Vanessa continued to assert herself, the children's reactions became even more obvious. They grew restless whenever she entered the nursery, making small cries that quickly turned into louder ones. Grace noticed the pattern and tried to comfort them, but the problem always returned as soon as Vanessa came close again. Vanessa ignored this, insisting that the babies were merely adjusting to new routines. Vanessa woke up that morning with a calm expression. She moved through the halls with slow steps, watching every detail and waiting for the moment she needed. Jonathan left earlier than usual, busy with work responsibilities. The second he was gone, her expression changed. She walked directly to the staff and informed them that everyone had to leave the house for internal maintenance. She used a firm tone that left no room for questions. The employees obeyed. Soon the mansion became completely silent. Vanessa closed the main door and stood still for a moment, confirming that no one else was there. She felt prepared to continue her plan. She went to the nursery, took Noah and Liam from their cribs, and carried both babies outside. Outside, Vanessa headed toward the large metal bathtub placed in the yard. She placed Noah and Liam inside it without hesitating. Their small bodies were exposed to the growing heat as she turned on the water and let it fill the tub. The babies began crying immediately, their voices loud and desperate, but she did not stop. She continued filling the tub until the water reached a level she found suitable. Then she took a pair of yellow gloves, identical to the ones Grace used for cleaning, and hung them over the rim of the metal tub. Her actions were deliberate and slow. Noah and Liam's crying became stronger as the hot water surrounded them. They squirmed, their faces red with discomfort, but Vanessa looked at them without emotion. She stepped back after placing the gloves and studied the scene as if evaluating her work. Everything looked the way she had planned. The cries echoed through the yard, but she paid no attention, turning her back and heading toward the mansion. Inside the house, Vanessa moved through the rooms with no sense of urgency. She did not check on the babies or respond to their cries. Instead, she stayed indoors for hours, walking from one area to another, sometimes sitting down, sometimes simply waiting. Every minute that passed was part of her plan. She wanted time to move forward, creating a scene that would confuse anyone who discovered it later. When she felt that enough time had passed, she went toward the front of the house. She positioned herself near the door, adjusting her appearance with careful movements. She fixed her hair, straightened her clothes, and practiced a soft, innocent expression. Jonathan arrived home expecting a quiet evening, but the moment he stepped out of the car, he heard loud, desperate crying coming from the garden. His heart raced as he ran across the yard. At the same time, Grace returned to the mansion, carrying her work bag. She heard the same cries and rushed toward the garden, her steps quick and alarmed. When Jonathan reached the large metal tub, he froze in shock. Noah and Liam were inside the hot water, their faces red and their bodies trembling. Jonathan's breath caught in his throat. His eyes moved from the twins to the pair of yellow gloves hanging over the rim of the tub. They were identical to the gloves Grace used every day for cleaning. Grace arrived a moment later, and the expression on her face changed to horror. She dropped her bag without thinking and ran to the babies, lifting them out of the hot water as fast as she could. Her hands shook as she held them close, trying to soothe their cries. Jonathan stood back, shocked and unable to process what was happening. As Grace tried to speak, Vanessa stepped out through the doorway of the mansion. She walked toward them slowly with a carefully measured expression. Her eyebrows were raised and her mouth was slightly open, as if she were genuinely surprised. She placed a hand over her chest and let out a quiet gasp, perfectly timed to make her appearance seem innocent. She looked at Jonathan with wide eyes. Then she looked at Grace, and her expression subtly shifted into one of concern mixed with suspicion. Vanessa stepped closer and gently touched Jonathan's arm as if offering comfort. She said softly that she didn't understand what had happened, but her tone suggested something had gone terribly wrong under Grace's watch. Grace heard the subtle suggestion and felt her stomach twist in fear. She clutched Noah and Liam tightly, her heart pounding as she tried to defend herself. She explained that she had just arrived, that she would never harm the babies, that someone was trying to set her up. Jonathan looked torn, his expression caught between disbelief and pain. He had trusted Grace for years, but seeing the babies in the tub, seeing the gloves, and hearing Vanessa's quiet comments pushed him toward a conclusion he did not want to reach. With a trembling voice, he told Grace to step back and give him the babies. Grace hesitated, appearing broken. She handed Noah and Liam to him slowly, tears falling uncontrollably. Jonathan cut her off, saying he needed time to understand what had happened. His tone was cold, distant, and full of hurt. Grace felt her knees weaken. She understood then that she was being blamed for something she would never do. Her heart broke as she realized everything she had built in that home was being destroyed in one single moment. Grace felt overwhelmed after being wrongly accused, but her determination grew stronger instead of fading. She knew she had to prove her innocence. The first thing she did was carefully pick up the yellow gloves that had been left by the metal tub. She held them with steady hands. When she looked closely at the inside of the gloves, she noticed something unusual: small dark residues stuck beneath the inner fingernail areas. They looked like traces left from someone else's skin. Grace placed the gloves in a clean bag, sealed it tightly, and promised herself she would find the truth. Grace realized she had no support from the family. Jonathan avoided looking at her, and the staff remained distant. With no one on her side, she understood she needed outside help. She remembered an old acquaintance, someone she trusted, a professional who worked at an independent laboratory. Without telling anyone, Grace contacted him in an urgent tone. She traveled discreetly to meet him, bringing the sealed gloves. Her acquaintance agreed to help and promised complete confidentiality. Grace left the laboratory feeling nervous, but hopeful for the first time since the terrible incident. She knew the truth could be uncovered through science. The waiting period felt long, but soon the results arrived. Grace returned to the laboratory, her heart pounding. The technician explained the findings with a serious expression. The material found inside the gloves contained genetic traces from a woman, someone who was not Grace. The results were clear and undeniable. Grace felt relief. The evidence proved she had been framed. She took the results carefully, feeling stronger. The truth was becoming clearer, and she finally had proof that could expose the lies. Grace knew she needed more than just the laboratory results. She began collecting everything that could help: written schedules, working hours, staff statements, and reminders of where she had been on the day of the incident. She organized all the documents one by one, creating a timeline of events that showed the inconsistencies in Vanessa's behavior. Even though she felt scared and lonely, she kept going. She refused to let a lie destroy everything she had built. Grace went to the local police department early in the morning, carrying all the documents she had gathered and the laboratory results. She sat in front of the investigators and explained everything calmly, step by step. She showed the sealed bag containing the gloves, the printed DNA report, and the records proving she was not inside the mansion during the critical time when the twins were placed in the tub. By the end of the conversation, the officers admitted that her statements matched the physical evidence. They decided the situation required deeper investigation. For the first time since the incident, Grace felt a small sense of hope returning. The investigators requested authorization to examine the mansion's camera recordings from the day of the incident. Once permission was granted, they watched the footage carefully. The recordings clearly showed Vanessa ordering all the employees to leave the property, claiming the mansion needed maintenance. The staff left reluctantly, and the cameras captured the exact moment the last worker exited the house. The officers also noted that Vanessa stayed behind completely alone with the twins. This contradicted Vanessa's previous claims. The evidence suggested that the incident was not accidental, but planned. The investigators interviewed several employees from the mansion. Each one described Vanessa's behavior during the days leading up to the incident. Their testimonies were consistent. Many recalled her walking around the service areas without explanation, asking strange questions and monitoring the routine closely. Others said she seemed agitated when Grace was nearby. These statements matched the growing suspicion that Vanessa had planned the entire situation. With enough evidence gathered, the investigators confronted Vanessa directly. They asked her to come to the station to clarify some details about the incident. At first, she claimed she had only tried to help Jonathan and the twins, but the investigators began showing her the evidence one piece at a time. They displayed the camera footage showing her ordering the staff to leave. Then they showed the timeline proving she was alone with the twins for several hours. Finally, they mentioned the DNA found inside the gloves. Vanessa froze for a moment, caught by surprise. As the questioning continued, the investigators revealed another disturbing discovery. They had checked Vanessa's internet searches and found several inquiries related to methods of transferring assets, inheritance procedures, and legal ways to gain financial control over a partner. These searches were conducted weeks before the incident. The officers also found text messages between Vanessa and an unknown contact. The messages were vague, but suggested discussions about timing and removing obstacles. By the end of the investigation, the entire plan Vanessa had created began to fall apart piece by piece. The case became stronger with each detail. Grace, who had quietly fought to prove her innocence, finally saw her efforts turn into something solid. Vanessa was arrested, and the authorities confirmed that the genetic material found inside the gloves matched hers. The collected records proved she had been responsible for abandoning the twins in the hot tub. Jonathan received the news in a state of shock. The truth struck him with painful force. He had trusted Vanessa, allowed her into his home, and believed her kind gestures. Now he realized every action had been part of a manipulation he never saw coming. His chest felt tight as he replayed past moments, noticing signs he had ignored. The betrayal overwhelmed him, leaving him feeling guilty, confused, and ashamed. He questioned his judgment and wondered how he could have failed to protect his children. Grace was officially declared innocent, and the officers informed her that her name had been fully cleared. The moment she heard the words, she felt a deep relief wash over her body. She returned to the mansion with a cautious heart, unsure of how the atmosphere would feel after everything that had happened. When she entered the nursery, she paused for a moment, looking at the babies' beds and the toys she had arranged so many times before. Grace took a deep breath and stepped forward. Noah and Liam responded to her return in a way that surprised no one. As soon as Grace approached their cribs, the twins recognized her presence. Their bodies relaxed and their expressions softened. They reached out their small hands, both seeking the comfort they had missed. Grace picked them up gently, holding one in each arm, and felt their warm bodies settle against her. Their breathing slowed, and their eyes grew calm, showing trust and safety. Jonathan watched this scene from the doorway, feeling a sharp ache in his heart. The contrast between Grace's genuine care and Vanessa's deceit became painfully clear. Jonathan stepped into the room with hesitant steps. His voice trembled as he called her name. Grace turned toward him, still holding the twins. Their eyes met, and Jonathan felt a painful mix of gratitude and regret. He approached slowly and admitted that he had failed her, that he had doubted her when she needed him to trust her most. Jonathan apologized sincerely, explaining that emotional manipulation had clouded his judgment. Grace listened quietly, her face calm, but her eyes emotional. She did not respond immediately, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. When she finally spoke, her tone was steady. She said she forgave him, not because the pain had vanished, but because holding on to anger would only harm everyone, especially the twins. In the days that followed, the mansion slowly began to regain its stability. With Vanessa gone, the anxious atmosphere faded. The staff resumed their routines without fear. Grace organized the nursery again, returning everything to its proper place. Jonathan made a firm decision to remove every trace of Vanessa from his life. He worked with his legal team to ensure she would never come near Noah and Liam again. Jonathan spent more time with the twins, learning their cues and participating in their routines. He relied on Grace for guidance, appreciating her experience and dedication. Together, they created a calmer environment for the children, focusing on consistency and safety. Noah and Liam grew more peaceful with each passing day, responding positively to the new harmony in the house. Jonathan felt grateful every time he saw them smile, knowing he had come dangerously close to losing them. As the months passed, Jonathan noticed his connection with Grace was growing in a quiet and natural way. What began as simple cooperation slowly turned into something deeper. He watched how she handled the twins with patience, how she soothed them when they were restless, and how she always put their well-being first. He realized he felt safe when she was around because she always brought clarity and calm. Jonathan began to understand qualities in her that he had overlooked before. He saw her courage in the way she defended the truth, her kindness in every gesture toward the children, and her loyalty in the way she stayed by the family's side through the hardest moments. These traits softened him in ways he did not expect. Their conversations grew longer and more comfortable, filled with small stories and sincere exchanges. Little by little, Jonathan realized that Grace had become an important part of his emotional life. As the household settled into a peaceful routine, Noah and Liam continued to grow healthy and full of energy. Their early trauma left no visible marks thanks to the consistent comfort they received from Grace. They laughed easily, crawled quickly around the nursery, and reached for her with excitement every time she entered the room. The mansion no longer felt heavy or tense. Instead, it felt like a home slowly rebuilding itself. Grace never tried to impress him or make herself appear important. She simply lived with honesty, and that honesty drew him toward her more each day. Grace, on her side, also experienced a shift in how she saw Jonathan. She had always respected him, but after the ordeal they endured, she began noticing sides of him she hadn't seen before. She saw how deeply he loved his children, how hard he worked to rebuild his confidence as a father, and how sincerely he regretted the mistakes he had made. Being with Jonathan and the twins gave her a sense of belonging she had quietly wished for, but never dared to imagine. Eventually, Jonathan reached a point where he knew exactly what he wanted for his future. One evening, in a simple and sincere moment inside the mansion, he asked Grace to marry him. There was no grand decoration, no audience, only the two of them standing in the place where their bond had grown naturally over time. Jonathan spoke with honesty, telling her how much she meant to him and how deeply he valued the life they had built together. Grace felt tears fill her eyes as she accepted, overwhelmed with emotion and gratitude. Their wedding was held at the mansion, simple and intimate, surrounded by the people who had witnessed their journey. Noah and Liam, now older and full of joy, stayed close to Grace throughout the ceremony. The atmosphere was peaceful and full of genuine affection. From that day on, the family found the stability they had long searched for. Jonathan felt complete again, knowing he had rebuilt his life with someone who represented honesty and kindness. Grace felt embraced by a family she loved deeply. Together, they began a new chapter marked by true affection, healing, and the promise of brighter days. The mansion, once filled with fear and deception, finally became what it was meant to be, a true home where love could flourish without doubt.